Okay, you've got your shelf conversion kit for your Gen 3 Pro, and the main function here is to reduce the height of the overall machine by removing the center shelves. And if you're going to be seated a lot, this just makes it more ergonomic to work with by removing those. And then you're going to set them aside and rebuild them into a side cabinet so you still have really nice stone storage. A couple things you're going to need to do this. 3 different sizes of Allen wrench. You're going to need a 1/4 inch, a 3/16 and a 3/32. It's also helpful to have one of your stones around. Doesn't matter if it's a stone or strop. You just want something about this size we're going to use to help prop up the unit as we take the bolts in and out. So the first thing to do is just rotate the unit around. You're going to be removing this back plate because in the new configuration you're going to use a shorter back plate once the unit is dropped down to a lower height. So take your 3/32 screw and Allen wrench and remove these button-headed cap screws here and set them aside. We'll want them again in a moment. So just loosen those off and set the back plate aside, but you're going to want to remove this kind of rubber bumper on the top here. You'll need it for the other back plate. Alright, now that those are off, the next step is to remove this upper portion, and I'm going to do that with the 3/16 inch wrench. And I'm going to go around to each of these socket head cap screws on the top plate and loosen them and remove them. And you want to set those screws aside and just gently lift off the top of the unit and set it aside for the moment. Next thing you're going to want to do is remove the shelf. Just slide it out towards the back and set it aside. Then you can turn the bottom base up onto its side like this, and again use that same 3/16 inch wrench to loosen out these 4 screws that are socket head cap screws on the bottom here. Once you get them out, set them aside. And set your shelves aside as well, or your uprights. When you get ready to take this last screw out, just kind of hang on to the base and the shelf support so it doesn't fall over on you. And set that other base support aside, or shelf support. Okay, now you've got your bottom plate here, and you get to make a decision about how you want to reconfigure it. There's a slot over here on this left corner where the depth key goes. You can reverse it if you prefer to have it on your right so that you're reaching for the depth key with your right hand, and set it up over here in the top right position, which is what I'm going to do for this configuration. Next, I'm going to take the upper portion and set it back on top of the bottom base, and I'm going to align these 4 holes with the holes that are on the bottom base. Just visually, it doesn't have to be precise. And I'm going to take 4 of these socket-headed cap screws and drop them down into the holes. And this is where having one of your stones handy is going to be really useful, because what I'm going to do is just tip this back to where this blue portion of the graduation plate is going to rest on that stone. And that's just going to help me hold everything together. And then I'm going to take each of the 4 specialty nuts. They're hex-headed on one side like a socket and then threaded on the other. And I'm going to just finger tighten them onto these bolts that are sticking through both plates. And I'm kind of just pinching the 2 plates together as I work so that it's easier for me to keep them together and keep the screws from falling out. Once you've got those nuts onto the screws, you can take a 1/4 inch Allen wrench and just lightly snug them down a little further so that everything is held together a little bit better. I'm just going kind of very loose here. And then you're going to take your 3/16 wrench and put it in the top position here and use your 1/4 inch wrench on the bottom position. And you'll tighten all 4 of these screws up. The way that these are designed, they will stick out of the bottom just a tiny bit, but they won't interfere with anything because the feet will lift this plate up off of the table. So don't be alarmed if you see a little bit of that head of the nuts there sticking out. It's not a problem. Okay, those are all snug together. I can stand this unit back up and set the stone out of the way. All right, the next step is to assemble the shorter back plate to the unit. So I'm going to take it with the holes on the bottom and just align it here on top of this bottom plate, flush up against this little plate here, and I'm going to take those same button head cap screws and screw it in. And for that, I'll want the 3/32 wrench. Okay, and then the rubber piece that we set aside from the larger back plate will go on to this back plate here. You just kind of spread it open with your fingers and set it over and let it close down. Alright, so that portion is complete. Your sharpener is now in a lower position. It's a lot more ergonomic if you're sharpening from a seated position. And we're set with that, so we're going to set it aside and work on building your side cabinet. Alright, the main component of the side cabinet is this piece here. And basically what's going to happen is we're going to put it together with these shelf supports and a couple screws, and we're going to attach some feet to it. So the first thing to do is stand these up kind of like this, and there is an orientation that you have to pay attention to. You'll see that there's these slots along these insides here of the shelf supports, and they don't go all the way through. They kind of stop short of the edge on this side. That's the front side, and they're designed to keep the shelf from sliding out the front. The back of this will hold, the back of the unit will hold the shelf in place from the back. So just remember that orientation, that these open ends are going to go towards the back. So I can stand these up like this, let a little distance apart from each other, and then I can slide the shelf in to one. And if you just have one shelf, then you're going for the middle slot. Okay, and it's a little bit fiddly. You know, this is a great opportunity where you might wish you had three hands or a friend, but I'm going to tilt this down onto this portion here and just slide it in and align up the holes in the top with the holes in this piece here. And I'm going to put in these socket-headed cap screws to hold it in place. And then use a 3/16 inch wrench to snug them down. And then I can tilt this unit onto its back, and I'm going to start installing the rubber feet and the other screws to hold it all together. So the way these feet are designed, the socket head cap screw goes through the hole so that the head is captured in that sort of recessed area, that countersunk area, and then I'll put it into the hole on the base of the unit. And I can tighten that down. And do the same thing with the other three. It might be easier to get to these two if I tip this all the way up now. Okay, and there you have it. You've got your side shelf for your stone storage. You can set them above and below. You can take these extra button head socket head cap screws and just cover up the holes in the front there just to kind of finish it out. And you're good to go.